in 2016, I think I've got the date right, you developed a deaccessioning strategy, and which hit some headlines because in this country, compared to certainly America, deaccessioning is not something that's explored as fully by the gallery and museum sector. I wondered, as context, now we're talking about philanthropy, really fundraising, sustainability, whether you could describe what that strategy was and how it came about.
Sure. After our centenary in 2015, which was, as I say, was an incredibly successful exhibition, we had to sit down and really think, after 15 years of trying to create the momentum of 20, 30 million pounds to create a proper building in a proper location with a little bit of an endowment fund and not succeeding. We had to really sit down and think, well, is this worth a candle? Is all this effort actually generating, or could it generate, and how could it generate the level of public benefit that we wanted to deliver and we felt deserved to be delivered and engaged with? And we concluded that if we couldn't raise the money after 15 years of transforming our level, our status, our reputation, then we had to rethink. And we did a major options analysis, of which we'd done many over the previous years, because we're always revisiting and making sure that we are happy with the direction that we're going. We came up with 3 alternatives. One was to close. Closure is always an alternative and should never be shied away from. 2 was to go digital and have the digital front supported by the physical. And 3 was that we actually merged with another institution, preferably a university, that A, could absorb our academic work, and B, had the space to absorb our collection, and there was some synergy between their collection, if they had a collection, and ours, but the space to exhibit. And we certainly didn't want to close, although we had a trustee to actually prepare the case for closure, because it was important that we actually examined that and compared it. And the idea in 2015-16 of actually going digital as a front face was premature. It was too risky. It wasn't yet really in people's minds. But the idea of merging with a university was, and still, if any universities out there listening, and still very appealing to us, because we would protect the brand, we would protect the academic work that we do, both in academic research and on artists, but also in arts and health and mental health. And it would have a space for us to actually display and exhibit our collection and our exhibitions. And that was the most attractive. And really by accident rather than design, I met the director of the Sainsbury Centre at the University of East Anglia, who's a very fine man, and I told him that this is our key option, and he said, talk to me. And we talked for 18 months, and we actually did agree a merger. I mean, you have to understand, I go back to the minnow and the whale and the ant and the elephant, yes? Sainsbury Centre is one of the most important, most amazing collections in the country. It's certainly got one of the most important and amazing spaces in the country. And there's little Ben Urry, who, as you kindly say, we punch above our weight, but if you measure us, we're still the ant rather than the elephant. And we agreed what for us was an excellent merger agreement, where our academic work would be integrated into the museum, our collection would be integrated into the Sainsbury collection, and we would be able to use their space for delivery and publications. And it was all agreed, and then unfortunately fell apart because Lord Sainsbury was not properly informed and was against it, and that's his prerogative. So that deal fell through, which was a huge blow to us after 18 months. But life goes on, c'est la vie, and you dust yourself down and you get on to the next one. And that's when we actually came back to the digital being the future for us. Does that Does that give you a little bit of background?
Sure, it does.
So you were talking about deaccessioning. I beg your pardon, yes.
So that happened about simultaneous with that was this deaccessioning aspect.
Well, the Sainsbury Centre, the agreement with the Sainsbury Centre is that they would take 200 key works and another 400 support works. But we had a collection of around 1,500. So there were 600 works that we were going to absorb into the Sainsbury collection, and that left 900 works, 900 works that were superfluous. And they were then going to be deaccessioned, and some of them were going to be sold because we needed a dowry, we needed to pay for a certain amount of expenses, and the others would be distributed to museums, to institutions, to collections, to libraries, to charities, wherever we could. So there was a hybrid, there's a mixed economy of gifting and selling. So that's when we started doing the huge amount of work of actually analysing the collection, ready for redefining.
And I think it's just before really your 2018 strategy when you really strategized this virtual museum,
yes.
Put it front and centre, was a time when Sotheby's sold some works,
yeah.
And you did mention before the support of, for example, the Art Fund with acquisitions. I know that the deaccessioning meant that you could no longer be accredited to the Museums Association, for example. I suppose it had very positive aspects in terms of honing your collection, in terms of raising funds. What has been the aspects in terms of what have you lost in terms of, say, accreditation or in terms of partnerships, do you think, through the deaccessioning in this country?
Well, deaccessioning it's the opposite of the Holy Grail. I mean, the museum sector see the collection as being the Holy Grail, and part of the ethos of the museum sector is that every work in the collection has to be treated equally. I find that really quite intellectually difficult to grasp, because if I had the Mona Lisa, and I had a drawing by David Glasser, both in the same collection, I'm not sure that I would be treating the drawing by David Glasser in the same format as I would be treating the Mona Lisa. So I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, if you like, that the sector really doesn't want to really address properly. And it is the elephant in the room, and it still is the elephant in the room of the museum sector. Can I deal with this in a slightly different way?
Of course, please.
Okay. In 2018, interestingly enough, and you'll forgive me, I had a feeling you might raise this, so
sure.
You'll forgive me if I prepared a little bit. But the museum sector as a whole, nothing to do with us, I must stress, but we're talking about Arts Council, Collections Trust, Association of Independent Museums, the Lottery, the Art Fund, all 15 of the full total establishment of the museum sector issued a statement. Oh, I'm so sorry.
You can take it if you want.
No. I'm sorry. I was once at a memorial service, and the chap was talking about his father and how important it was, and he was on top of everything. And then his phone rang, and he said, "Oh, my God, that'll be him." So, but this document talked about the joint statement on museums and collections at risk. And there's all the different institutions, and it says the organisations supporting this statement wish to provide appropriate and timely advice in such situations, supporting governing bodies in their decision making. We first went to the Museums Association in 2013, okay, and we had conversations with them literally every year. So there was no surprise to anybody, yes, including the Arts Council and Nick Sirota and everybody else. It knew exactly where we were. It then goes on to say, however, the responsibility for the stewardship of the museum, its buildings and collections remain with the governing bodies, and an effective response will depend on the willingness of an organisation to take ownership of its issues. And that's a key sentence. What it doesn't then say is, as long as we agree. And that really is fundamental. because the board of Ben-Uri took on its issues. It took ownership of its issues. And it made a fundamental decision that what we had to offer society in the 21st century, in terms of return on investment, was far greater than having some valuable works sitting in store, irregularly, rarely, or in some cases never exhibited, because we had better works by these artists. So therefore, other institutions or our curators didn't actually exhibit them, because nobody wants to exhibit the third best. They want to exhibit the best. And that was a decision that we came to, that on a return on public investment, on the public benefit investment, it was better to save Ben-Uri and create a new platform and a new future for it that could actually maximize its public benefit generation and engagement, than to actually consider that certain artworks were holier than thou and could not be touched, and or, as many people in the establishment said, you have to give it to another museum because the public benefit is transferable. But it would be transferable, but it would be transferable to the benefit of the other museum, when we were actually breaking our heads trying to actually protect and save our museum. So we make no apologies for the strategy that we created. And we actually bit the bullet and we deaccessioned some 500 works because they didn't really have a place in a museum collection. They had a place in a local community collection, and we offered 150 works, a representative collection, to the Jewish Museum because it represented the Jewish community artists. This was before they unfortunately had their financial crisis, but they refused because it was another on cost for them. And actually, the reality is that maybe not many people are so interested in it. So we did everything that we could. We communicated. It wasn't true that we actually hadn't communicated. We had communicated. It's another story, but politics has its own dynamics. And we deaccessioned, and the works that we sold were rarely, if ever, exhibited. They were second, third, or fourth best in the collection. And the money that we generated, I mean, I was asked, just say that you're going to reinvest it in the collection. And I said, I can't, because we're not. We're going to reinvest it in the institution. We're going to actually pave the way and pay for 5 years of transformation, because that's what we think the future is. We believe the future for us as a small institution is actually through the digital world, not the physical world. So that's how it happened.